Hello, everybody. This is Kyle. How are you all doing? Today in this video, I wanted to talk about um, weirdness in conversations and kind of getting not beyond weirdness, but like embracing weirdness in order to have better conversations with people and in order to bring a little bit of zest to a conversation, and why this can be a good thing and why you should do it, or at least try and think about it and maybe see if it has some positive benefit for your social relationships. So basically, lately I've been watching a lot of Craig Ferguson. He's a talk show host. He did the Late Late Show for many, many years, and I've just been binge watching all of his interviews with people. And he has a lot of interviews with, very beautiful female celebrities, male celebrities, obviously. But the thing with Craig Ferguson is, I honestly think he was one of the best talk show hosts ever, because he was so charismatic, so good at having a conversation with people, and seemed, when he has conversations with people, it's so relaxed and natural seeming, and it flows, and he's very expressive, and he uses a lot of pauses and stuff like that. He's a comedian. He's a very, very smart guy, very witty and very quick, very fast, and it's honestly like a pleasure watching these interviews that he does with people, because he's so good at talking to people. And it's like, why is he so good at talking to people, and why are the conversations with him so entertaining, and why does it seem like a lot of these celebrities wanted to come back on his show and like be a part of his show? What was it about him versus like like David Letterman or something, which I like David Letterman, although he's had issues and he seems like maybe he's a little bit of a grumpy guy. And I watched a compilation of his like cringy moments with female celebrities where he was being creepy. And Craig Ferguson, maybe this whole video has to be about Craig Ferguson, but he was really the inspiration, because I've been binge watching so many of his videos of like weirdness and what does it mean to be like weird in a conversation. So something I noticed with him that I've started to incorporate in my own conversations with people is you get a thought, and it's a random thought, and then you just kind of ask somebody, like you're having a conversation, somebody mentions I like coffee, and then you can just say like, oh, do you know how coffee's made? Do you know like where they get the beans from? Have you ever been to, and then, okay, yeah, so where are the beans from? So then you're like, okay, well, have you ever been to Guatemala or anything like that where they like get these beans from? Like, have you ever been there? Do you know anything about this? Like, it's just like, it's kind of a stream of consciousness sort of thing where you are, you get a thought in your head, and a lot of times I think where awkwardness comes about in a conversation is people are so focused on keeping a conversation in these like tiny little boundaries of like, you're having a conversation with a coworker, you're talking about, the operations of the facility, or, your other coworkers or something like this, and it's all very structured and rigid in like some narrow little topic. So where some of the awkwardness comes in is you don't venture out of it, or you run out of things to say, but it's not necessarily that you run out of things to say about, in general. It's not like your mind is completely blank. It's that what you want to say, you're not saying. Like, somebody says, oh, I've got a Scottish Terrier. Well, yeah, you can talk about Scottish Terriers, you can talk about dogs or whatever, but like it might pop up in your head like, well, have you ever been to Scotland? Like that kind of thing. Like, okay, have you, like, you're having like a stream of consciousness, like a spitballing kind of thing, where you're kind of throwing things at people, and I think people don't do this because it seems weird. it seems too free for all when they want to keep things on a straight and narrow on a very very easy path. But it makes it a funner conversation when you like incorporate in like different ideas and different random stuff, and like just a movie pops in your head and you're like, have you ever seen this movie? Like The Never Ending Story. It's like if that just popped in your head, you're like, oh, have you ever seen The Never Ending Story? And I think people don't do that because the other person would be like, well, why are you asking me this? But I think it comes back to like natural human curiosity of like, I'm curious about you. I just want to know. I want to know about you, And I think people actually like this when you start to incorporate in like everything you've encountered. Like, the world's a big place and there's so many like movies and music and stuff like that. Excuse me. Books and everything, some of the stuff like political, religious stuff, not good to incorporate into all conversations, but sometimes it does. Like if you're very comfortable with somebody and they're up for that kind of thing, then yeah, you can talk to them about religion and politics and stuff like that. But for for most people, I think you can actually start to just like spitball ideas, and it's like that's people laughing. It's like comedy is kind of like putting together like weird ideas that don't always seem to make sense, but like sometimes like comedy is what makes people laugh is like saying kind of random stuff, not like super random, but like something where it's like you're not just being super polite of like, oh, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. What's your name? Blah blah blah. Like all that's fine at the beginning, but if you want to spice it up, you have to be a little off the wall. And I think this comes back to accepting like that a conversation is not this like set thing. It's not this like easy thing with easy boundaries. It's like it can be anything. You can say almost anything, and there's a little bit of fear, and a little bit of like Kierkegaard talked about the dizziness of anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. So having this freedom of like having a conversation with someone, you don't know where it's going to go, you don't know exactly like what someone's going to talk about or what someone's going to ask you. But at the same time, that excitement is something that makes the conversation actually enjoyable. It makes it something where you're actually laughing and actually like taking part in it, and actually like feel like you're becoming a more fluid, responsive individual as well. Like you can actually like have a conversation with someone because you're not stuck in these little like boundaries and stuff like that. You can actually like just start talking about whatever, and it's fun and it's cool to actually do that. So embracing weirdness, like I think in a lot of ways it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and that's a very common expression. But I think it's true when it comes to like weird stuff of like randomly asking somebody something is like, if you do it in a weird way where you're like very like serious and like and you're asking them like with like a blank face, as I sometimes do because sometimes I'm not very expressive, but if you ask them something and it's a fun jovial thing, like you're joking and you're laughing and you kind of have this air about yourself of like, I know this is kind of ridiculous, but I'm gonna say it anyway. That's really entertaining, and that's something I really like about Craig Ferguson, of like binge watching his interviews of people, is that he seems to have this air. He's very self-aware that what he's saying to the other person can very well seem just bizarre and weird, and he can come across as weird and eccentric to other people, but he's aware of that. He's aware that it's weird, but he does it anyway, and people love it, and people respond to it because it seems very like genuine and almost childish in a way. Not immature, but although sometimes he's immature as well. But that's also part of his charm, I think. But the kind of childlike mentality of, you know, kind of seeing the world like a playground where you're like, you're talking about whatever and you're saying whatever and you're like, you know, it's this freedom to like really like say kind of what you're thinking, rather than being stuck behind like, you know, layer upon layer of, you know, isolating mental blockades. Instead you can kind of get beyond yourself and like, you know, kind of say what you're thinking and start a conversation. And I think, you know, yeah, I've been analyzing like why does it seem like people like Craig Ferguson so much? You know, like what is likable about him? You know, what makes him a likable guy? And I think it's because he's very genuine. He's actually very interested in the person he's talking to. Of course, you have to be a talk show host, but you know, then again, sometimes like with David Letterman, for instance, like didn't always seem actually that interested in the other person. Sometimes he did. Like I don't want to trash David Letterman. I've liked a lot of his interviews. I just think it's like, what is likable about him? And also I find Conan is another really good like talk show host, and I watched a lot of his interviews with people too. In fact, that seems to be, you know, something about interviewers, like what makes somebody a good interviewer. And I think it's you have to ask, well, what makes somebody a bad interviewer? What makes somebody bad at the job of interviewing? And I think there's a few things. I think the biggest thing is a lack of empathy for the person you're talking to, where, you know, this person has been asked 100 times about their relationship, or, you know, it's like that one video of like Mike Tyson where the guy brings up like, oh, you know, beat your wife or whatever he did, I can't remember, but like, and then he gets upset. It's like, you've obviously not done any research on Mike Tyson. You obviously don't know who he is, because if you knew Mike Tyson, you wouldn't randomly bring up some shit he did in the past. Like you wouldn't bring it up because you know he's not going to have a good reaction to it. So why are you doing it? You know, and there's videos of like a guy bringing up Robert Downey Jr.'s drug past, and I've heard about, you know, Tina Turner. You know, she was, you know, beaten by her ex-husband, and then she really regretted coming out to people about it, because all these interviewers like over the next like 10 years would like, that's all they would ask her is about, you know, how Ike Turner beat her, right? So I think to be a good interviewer, you have to have some amount of empathy for the person you're interviewing, where you have respect for them. But what does it mean to have respect for somebody? I think to have respect for somebody kind of seems to boil down to like, I want them to have a good time. I'm interested in them having fun or being comfortable or feeling good. And there's many ways to do that, and like, so you can have the sense of, I respect you, and therefore in order to make you feel good, I prop you up and like, you know, genuflect to you, and like, you know, you're superior to me and I'm terrible and you're great, you know, kind of like you would treat like a dictator or a king or something like that, where it's like, or your boss, or like, you know, where you're like, oh, you're so great and I'm so terrible, all this kind of stuff. But I like the way that like Craig Ferguson treats people with respect, where he's like, you know, I respect you as a human being, and therefore I'm going to try to make you feel good by eliciting, you know, the emotions of like humor and like comfort and, you know, having a good time and stuff like that, and he tries to get that out of people, which is really interesting, like how he also flirts with a lot of like his female guests. He's very, very upfront about like the sexual innuendo and stuff like that, and like seems like everything he says is like sexual innuendo and all that, but like, but they enjoy it and they're comfortable and they're happy and stuff like that. And I don't think it's just because he's a late night host, but I think it's like the way he does it, where he's not trying to like take advantage of the woman or whoever, right? He's trying to have a good time himself and also get other people to have a good time as well. So I guess this is kind of ventured off of my initial idea of to like, you know, talk about why being weird in a conversation isn't a bad thing. But I would say, maybe I'll just make this about Craig Ferguson. How about that? You know, nobody's watching these anyway, so thank you if anybody ever watches these. But yeah, I think about him. He seems to, you know, be able to talk to people in a way where it gets their guard down. And even like I've watched interviews where he was like with Paris Hilton. Like Paris Hilton is, you know, to many people a very fake person. I think she puts on an act for sure. Probably less so as she's gotten older and stuff, but yeah, she definitely puts on an act, but he still is able to talk to her in a human way. It's like, I think the empathy of being able to see things from her perspective and almost in a Jerry Seinfeld way, like point out like the little funny things about human life of like, she has a dog, so it's like, so he asks her like, you know, do you have to clean up the dog's poop and stuff like that. It's like, it's a very human, mundane thing. It's like, you know, if you're talking to Paris Hilton or let's say Ariana Grande or I don't know, whoever's like, you know, super famous woman nowadays, like a lot of people would just talk to her about like, oh, you're, you know, all, you know, you designer, whatever, and you're like, you know, what movie are you working on, and like all this like stuff that's like, yeah, that's all the big superficial stuff, which is fun, which is cool to talk about, but you know, these people are human too, and I think like they experience the human, you know, the human reality that we all do, and they exist in the same like big cultural space that we, you know, especially in America, but even in Canada and across the world, like we're all sharing a very, very similar I don't know, matrix, I guess, a very similar cultural miasma, a very similar cultural space where, you know, everybody's seen Willy Wonka, you know, like everybody's seen Star Wars. Maybe not everybody, but like it's like you can ask anybody like, oh, do you like Lord of the Rings? Have you watched Lord of the Rings? What about Harry Potter? What about Star Wars? Have you seen Titanic? You know, it's like and all this big cultural stuff. It's like we find ourselves in that, and that's where you start drawing out similarities with people and funny stories and interesting perspectives. And it's like, well, did you like this character? Did you not like that character? Do you like this kind of movie? And it's like you can get people talking, and once people start talking to you and are a little bit excited and happy to talk to you, then their guard comes down and it becomes a lot easier, and it becomes like you can actually have a conversation with someone. It's like you're both kind of enjoying it. So I think, you know, that's something that I want to work on in my own life of kind of emulating a little bit of his style of being able to, you know, talk to somebody and have a good time and be lighthearted and find connections and, you know, speak freely and, you know, enjoy myself while also getting the other person to enjoy themselves. And yeah, sometimes that is, I think it's weird in the sense of like I'm saying things that maybe not everybody says, or, you know, you're awkward and this situation is awkward, but I'm not going to be awkward because I'm going to just get people laughing. I'm going to get people smiling. I'm going to get people talking. Like, so I guess the weirdness happens when you start getting comfortable and like getting people laughing, getting people smiling, and like kind of free to talk you know, yourself with other people, and, you know, kind of have an improvisational quality to your conversations with people. Um, but to do that, you have to, um, you have to face the fear of things falling flat. Of like you say something and people are like, "Why you why are you saying that?" Or I think a lot of the time it's like, the fear that like this person does not want to have a connection with me. They don't want to connect with me. So me trying to do something with them is gonna fail. But like, you know, I've started working in sales, so I'm working on developing more of my own ability to make connections with people quickly and keep conversations flowing and getting people comfortable, getting people to trust me, and getting sort of things to work smoothly and stuff like that, and getting along with people and being friendly and all that. And so I think, yeah, I mean, like, for anybody watching, I would really recommend you watch Craig Ferguson and see how he talks to people, because he's so good at making people feel comfortable and open up genuinely within like a couple minutes. And yeah, he does it in a wide variety of ways. He does it in the humor aspect, the genuinely seeming to care and respect the other person he's talking to. He doesn't ever. I don't think I've watched a lot of his interviews. I don't see any hint of like negative, like angry emotions. Like he does, and if he does have kind of an anger or something like that, he'll express it in a very like what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like that kind of thing. Like, what are you going on about? Like he's not like serious. Like what are you talking about? Like that's not cool. Like he doesn't want to bring anybody down, but he's still willing to disagree with people and like poke fun at what people are saying and stuff like that. So he's a really great conversationalist, and he's somebody that I would highly recommend you pay attention to. So this video definitely shifted from like why you should be weird in social situations, or like why you shouldn't fear being weird, into a more general idea of like why Craig Ferguson is so good at conversations. So I was spitballing, hopefully this was interesting, but yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.